evening, everybody, and welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 372. And tonight, we get to actually look into the MIrrormere. We looked at the approach to the MIrrormere and the sort of tourist, little like a guide, tourist guiding that Gimli was doing. His invitation to Frodo and Sam, who are making their injured way towards, more slowly than Gimli, down the sloping sward to the to Durin stone. And this evening, we will be looking at the actual MIrrormere. We'll be looking at them look at the MIrrormere. And after that, more landmarks. And Aragorn pursuing an interesting path in his first role as leader. So that's what's coming up. Who knows? Maybe we'll do 2 slides again. You'll notice I've been doing multiple slides lately, right? I'm like totally turning things around. We'll see. We'll see. But I do, nevertheless, want to do some quick announcements just to remind you of stuff that's coming up. So as usual, I will check out blackberry.signumuniversity.org and see what's going on here. Just a few quick things. First of all, note that we have a moot coming up soon. Our next moot is May 9th in Denver, Colorado. It's time for Mountain Moot again. Looking forward to getting back to Denver, being surrounded by the beautiful mountains, and of course, most importantly, getting to see the wonderful folks from Mountain Moot again. So it's the 9th of May. Again, that's our next upcoming regional moot. And the one after that is going to be really fun. And that's going to be Willowmoot out in Belgium. The other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to, there's a really cool thing happening right now. Well, never mind. I won't tell you about that. It is cool, but I'll tell you about that. There'll be time later to tell you about that. Let me instead remind you, I wanted to talk about Signum tutorials again, briefly, because this tutorials program is so cool. If you are working on a project of some kind, which could be a small project or a big project, maybe you're writing something, maybe you're working something up for publication, maybe you're researching something, maybe it could be creative writing, it could be professional writing, it could be scholarly writing. I emphasize writing because that's the most common of the projects that we get. You can work with one of our faculty at Signum Tutorials. Signum Tutorials is designed to be a place where you can come to get an academic mentor to guide you through whatever project you are undertaking. This is a really cool opportunity that you just don't get in most places, where you can just come in and for the price of a token, one of our tokens, which is like anywhere from 130 to 175 bucks, you can get a month's worth of support from one of our great faculty members. This again is something you can do on a really short-term basis, in terms of like if maybe you've written something and you'd like somebody to look over it, like a writing tutoring sort of situation. Or maybe you want help of another kind. Maybe you're going to give a moot presentation for the first time and you would really like to go over it with somebody, or even practice it and get advice on presentation and structure and things like that. That's a really wonderful thing to do a little short-term tutorial on. Or maybe you've given a moot presentation and you would really like to, it went really well, and you would really like to develop that moot presentation into to take it further, to expand it into something that could be submitted to publication somewhere, perhaps say to the Signum Collaboratory. Well, you could do that. So that would be something which, maybe you get a slightly longer term tutorial. You have a mentor who will work with you on that over the course of whatever, how long it takes, a couple months for you to develop that. There's And you, of course, it can also be a longer term project. We've got a couple people who are writing novels and who have a creative writing mentor assigned to them, who is advising them and helping them and giving them feedback and accountability through the process of completing the putting together of their novel. It's also possible you could use it for something like a longer term research project. Lots of really, really fun opportunities in Signum tutorials. So all you have to do is go here to BlackBerry, click on the student interest form. So click on tutorials, then click on the student interest form, and then just tell us about your project, and we will start the matchmaking process and get you connected with a mentor who can help you with that. So that is our Signum tutorials program. It is simple, but it's really, really fun. So I encourage you to look into that. There's a little recorded video from me which captures me in a wonderful moment here on the front page, where I explain the program a little bit more. All right, let us jump into the text then. Okay, here we go. They stooped over the dark water. At first they could see nothing. Then slowly they saw the forms of the encircling mountains, mirrored in a profound blue, and the peaks were like plumes of white flame above them. Beyond there was a space of sky. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. Of their own stooping forms no shadow could be seen. "O Khaled-Zaram, fair and wonderful," said Gimli. "There lies the crown of Durin till he wakes. Farewell." He bowed and turned away, and hastened back up the greensward to the road again. "What did you see?" said Pippin to Sam, but Sam was too deep in thought to answer. Bob, I was thinking the exact same thing as I was reading. Look at that. It's a GL word all by itself. Yeah, I found that very striking too. It's very unusual. Now, it's not gloom. It's not gloaming, right? It's not his like favorite GL words that are always paired with things, but there you go. Write it down. We came across one, a GL which does not have another GL nearby. Yeah, Glimmer is a favorite, and Glamdring, of course. Yeah. There you go, Dark Satanic Biscuit Factory. That's it, right? The lack of GL is because Glamdring is not around anymore, right? It's like a little memorial of Gandalf, the isolated GL sitting there without Gandalf's sword to alliterate with it. Yeah. Josh thinks it's a glaring oversight, which is certainly true. But, yeah. Yes, Dizzy, you are right. There are lots of S's going on here. So we can definitely notice some alliteration in that first paragraph, which is almost purely descriptive, after the first two sentences, that is. They stooped over the dark water. At first they could see nothing. Then slowly they saw the forms of the encircling mountains mirrored in a profound blue, and the peaks were like plumes of pure white flame above them. Plumes, I added an extra P for good measure. Plumes of white flame above them. Beyond there was a space of sky. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. Of their own stooping forms no shadow could be seen. Yeah. This definitely alliterative mode again. Bjorning, I agree. Notice in that third sentence, and it does start fairly, we get some kind of pre-gaming for it. That is one thing that we'll notice, that there are some F's and S's. F's and S's happen a lot. In the rest of the description that's going to come. And those get kind of anticipated, right? They stooped at first in those first two sentences, which describe actions, right? So notice again he doesn't just launch into description. Just like we were noticing when he was describing the valley and the MIrrormere from a distance, he doesn't just doesn't just plunge into description. He first describes their actions. They stooped over the dark water. At first they could see nothing. Then slowly they saw, and then we get the description of what they see. Yeah. Yes, good. Dizzy and Jackie are both pointing out the stooping that comes at the beginning and the end. They stooped over the dark water of their own stooping forms. No shadow could be seen. What is interesting about the repetition of the word stooping? Do you remember that word? Who else stooped in this spot? That's the verb. Durin did in the poem. He stooped and looked in MIrrormere and saw a crown of stars appear, like gems upon a silver thread above the shadow of his head. Yeah, it's in the poem. That's the verb in the poem. Stooped and looked. So we get they're standing in the spot where Durin first looked into the MIrrormere. And we get the repetition twice, right, of that language. They stoop to look, and one of the things that they don't see is their stooping forms. Okay, well, let's come back to that. Let's continue thinking about the sound patterns, because quickly, as soon as we start the description, then slowly they saw the forms. SSF. Again, those sibilants and the fricatives, right? But then notice how we quickly get a bunch of repeated sound. Those really like get your attention, alliterative pairings. Mountains mirrored. Profound blue. Profound peaks plumes. All right in a row there, right? These are the kinds of things that these are the kind of things that like get your attention, even if you're not looking for it, right? The S's and F's you probably wouldn't notice if you weren't thinking about this, but the mountains mirrored, profound peaks plumes, you might notice. At least it's going to have a kind of effect because it's fairly prominent, right? Space of sky. The bee from beyond picking up the bee in profound blue. Jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. Stars, sunlight, sky. Yeah. Yes, we do get sky twice, a space of sky. And I notice he's when we pay attention to this, we can see him, what seems like Tolkien going out of his way for the alliterative effects here. There was a space of sky. That is a suspiciously sibilant way of saying that, right? I would honestly suggest that even sunlight was in the sky above. That also strikes me as a slightly peculiar way to say it. And yes, we do get the P in space as well. There was a space of sky. So we combine the S with the P sound. Yes, there was a space of sky. I love it when he does that kind of thing, when he establishes two sounds and then plays with their combination as well. Tolkien loves to do that. You see that in his poetry a lot. I'm just remembering he does that in a gorgeous way in the Light as Leaf on Linden Tree poem. I did an analysis of that. I like, the same kind of sound analysis I did of Gimli's poem when we went through and looked at that. I did that in that poem for a Signum Studios video, the discussion I'm having with New Beta about Tolkien's poetry and rap. And it was so cool the way he kept doing that in that poem. Yes. So I still don't totally feel like I know what to do with his alliteration, if you see what I mean. It is a feature of his description, like his telling us what they see. Paragraphs. And I'm not sure I yet feel that I have a confident sense of, like, what does it... I'm tempted to say, what does it mean? But I don't mean that in the sense that it has some kind of, like, abstruse or symbolic meaning or something like that. Like, why? What is the function? And how might that function be served by the particular sounds that he's choosing? No, Maureen, the shadow, Tolkien would not classify shadow as a sibilant like the S's. There is a similarity in sound between s and sh. So there's a sort of connection, but he would not call those the same thing. But notice how shadow picks up on shone in the deep, shone glinting stars. So we've got the SH and the S of shone stars and shadow seen at the end. So you can see him sort of weaving those patterns together. Yeah, exactly. So yes, like, first of all, exactly what sort of aural effect is he going for when he does this? I think that sometimes when he does this during, like, action sequences, it helps to serve the, like, there it much more clearly serves a transition into mythic mode, right? Into high levels. It makes it sound more resonant. It sounds more like epic poetry, right? When it's alliterating, even in a fling fuel on the fire kind of sense, right? We were, that's of course one famous example where we were noticing a lot of alliteration in that combat description. But the use of alliteration so pervasively in these description paragraphs, in these show us what they see paragraphs, I don't think it can be quite the same effect. Perhaps it has something to do with shaping or influencing the sort of feeling or pacing or rhythm of the description. Then slowly they saw the forms of the encircling mountains mirrored in a profound blue, and the peaks were like plumes of white flame above them. Beyond there was a space of sky. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. Of their own stooping forms no shadow could be seen. It does elevate the prose to a more poetic level, Jackie. It gives a kind, I'm just using vague words like resonance, but it gives a kind of resonance. It's like adding reverb, even if you don't notice it, right? In some sense, like you might not notice even, especially if you're just flicking over it with your eyes really fast. You might not even really notice even mountains mirrored. But certainly when I was reading it aloud, I could not miss either mountains mirrored or profound peaks, plumes, and space. Yeah, I certainly, Maureen, I agree. Um, Thank you, Bjorning, for that. I do agree with Maureen that he is creating there is a, there is an overlap, right? When he is describing something and wants to paint it for us, he definitely does, that seems to correlate pretty heavily with these kind of much more poetic alliterative utterances. Um, I think that's true. I think that's true. Um, yeah, I think, I mean, it has something to do, even not getting into the finer points of it. That is to say, trying to discern why he chooses particular sounds. Like why P's and S's and F's in this paragraph specifically, as opposed to other sounds. He could have alliterated on other sounds and he chose not to, right? What is it about you know, the plosive P and the fricative F and the sibilant S, with in Tolkien's classifications, fricative sh, that, and the patterning that he's doing there. Like, are there things that he feels with his own ear, with his own phonoaesthetic senses, that those particular sounds that they invoke things that are, relevant to this particular scene that he's describing? Is it like, I can't help but think it's a little bit like Maureen thinking about your painting metaphor, and also not necessarily metaphor, like Tolkien is actually a painter too, and sometimes paints some of these scenes. And of course you'll have noticed that we've gotten to the scene that Ted Naismith painted in the title image I've been using as our intro video for years now, right? And we finally have gotten to the moment that he is depicting, which is the MIrrormere and its reflection. But anyway, Tolkien himself also does paint it. But is it, again, thinking of, Maureen, about your metaphor of the semi-quasi metaphor of the painting, I have a hard time feeling that somebody with an ear as sensitive as Tolkien's clearly was isn't deliberately choosing sounds like a painter deliberately chooses colors to use, right? I mean, I have to think there's some sort of analog there, and that there is something in Tolkien's own aesthetic sense that made him say, yeah, no, P's and S's and SH's. That's what this scene needs. Just as, again, as if he were trying to paint something, he would be like, oh, no, this is blues and purples, right? Yeah, I like tone color. Exactly. I think, yeah. Yeah, I have a harder time, Dark Satanic Biscuit Factory, doing a more direct analogy to music mostly because I think I'm too ignorant. Because I think the analog would be something like particular chords, particular kinds of chords that you would use. In a particular movement to try to capture something. And I just don't know enough about them. Not that I know much about painting, but anyway, yeah. I can't imagine that Tolkien does this sort of thing, like the kind of alliteration and alliterative patterns that we see. Again, literally patterns, even to the things like, shown, stars, shadow, seen. Notice there's two syllables in between: shown, glinting, stars, shadow could be seen, right? I mean, they're really quite close parallels there. Anyway, yeah, like I can't imagine he's doing this kind of alliterative patterning and not thinking about that at all, right? Not thinking about selecting his sounds and not just letting anyway, but I don't feel like I have the key. I'm not sure that I yet understand. Maybe over the years we'll get better at this as we move through, and we will begin to, a few years back we weren't even noticing this at all. We only came to notice it. We only came to notice it at like Carathras. And so we had been studying this for 6 years before we even noticed it. So, give us another 6 years and maybe we'll start to understand it. Maybe we'll, we did definitely talk about it with Fling Fuel on the Fire, and that might have, but we had already noticed by then. It was definitely, I remember I have like a flashbulb memory of the first time it really struck me. Holy cow, he's doing this throughout his prose. Was in the descriptions from Carathras on the snowy morning. And the Fling Fuel on the Fire is right after that. So we had been primed for it. But anyway, but the Fling Fuel on the Fire is a memorable marker, as it were. Anyway, so yeah, maybe after a few more years, we'll begin to sort of recognize the flavor a little bit. Yeah. By the way, I see some of you talking about like what art or like music or whatever Tolkien may or might not have liked. If it's my own experience is that I find that very hard to predict. There are some things that he really likes that I would not have predicted he would like. Like even some of Pauline Baines's illustrations. I like Pauline Baines. But there are some of her illustrations, that he's like, I love it. And I'm like, you do? I wouldn't have thought you would have liked that one. Anyway, and there are some artists like Maureen mentions Cor Bloch. He liked Cor Bloch, and I'm like, really? I wouldn't have guessed that. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm sometimes surprised. And therefore, I've given up trying to predict what he would probably like or not like. But anyway, so yes, and Bjorning in literature as well. He disliked Dorothy Sayers, like he disliked Lord Peter Wimsey, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, Tolkien, I'm going to fight you on that one. Exactly. Like there are many. Most of the time that something emerges where like we get a clear opinion from Tolkien about something, I find that it is not just something that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's something that you know, I wouldn't have expected. So again, I've stopped trying to think that I can guess correctly. That's my own personal take home, is that I've stopped trying to think that I can guess correctly what Tolkien would or would not have enjoyed. Yeah. Anyway, backing up a moment from the soundscape of that paragraph, let's actually pay attention to what the words actually say now. The first thing that is interesting to me is, at first they could see nothing. That's odd. It's odd because, so one might be tempted to say on a quick reading that the only thing weird about the MIrrormere, when you look in it, is that you see the stars reflected in the sky in the middle of the daytime, which is not what happens, right? Normally, it's sunlight sky. So the fact that something is being reflected that is not in fact up above it, but it's more than that. It's more than that. Exactly, Bjorning, exactly as you say, when there is a deep, dark pool and you look into it in a sunny day, nothing is exactly what you do not see. Like, it should not take time for the forms of the encircling mountains to slowly come into focus. I mean, if you've ever looked in a lake, at the surface of a lake, by the mountains, like, you kind of see that right away. In fact, sometimes, of course, it can be if it's really dark, the reflection will just be clearer. Like, it will be hard to see anything but the reflection. Yes, Fencing Frog, certainly it is the mountain that you'll see immediately. And maybe it would take you a while to notice other things. But anyway, so that's the first weird thing. At first they could see nothing. And the suggestion there, to me, is that everything they see, it's not that some percentage of what they're seeing is the normal reflection. Like, they see the reflection of the mountains all right, but the space of sky is weird. Deviant, differs from the actual thing above them. It's not just that. The mere fact that when they look in, they first see nothing and then a picture comes into view is deeply weird from the start. And the vision that they perceive in the water, which I feel almost compelled to call it a vision rather than merely a reflection, is the encircling mountains. And the fact that he uses the verb mirrored suggests that you're not just seeing a vision of the mountains from some other angle or something like that. Like, you're actually seeing the mountains around. So the reflection of the mountains come through, just not immediately. They are mirrored in a profound blue. That is the color of the water influences the picture. The mountains look blue in the water. Yes, many of you last week and this week are thinking very sensibly about the link between Galadriel's mirror and the MIrrormere. what I'm going to say about that is going to be frustrating. But we kind of need to wait till we get there to compare the two of them. But what I will say is that it's, I think, very well noticed, right? I mean, look, remembering ahead, just in case the magic dwarf mirror and the magic elf pool, both bodies of water that you look into and see visions in, didn't already, suggest the connection between the two of them. The fact that Galadriel herself comments on Kelidzarum, remembering ahead, should really kind of cement the connection, I think, in our minds. So, yeah, that I don't think that's a coincidence at all. And I do think that he is inviting us to juxtapose these two things together and see what we see when we compare the two of them. But we're going to have to wait a modest little stretch of time until we get to the Mirror of Galadriel. And we can, at that point, put that back against our description. Yeah, I'm not going to make any promises as to when that's going to be. That's the next chapter from here, and there's a bunch of poetry between here and there. So, yeah, no promises as to when precisely that will be, but we'll get there, and when we do, we will remember it, and we will come back here and look at the two of them together. But certainly having that in mind, kind of, putting a little bookmark in that idea as we continue to read forward, I think that's a really excellent plan. I agree, Jackie, with a comment that you made before that the word profound seems important in the description. Mirrored in a profound blue. Profound is an unusual word, an unusual adjective to apply to a color. But of course it just means deep, right? And deep is a conspicuous word when describing a dwarfy vision. And it's kind of an ironic one when it is describing peaks, which are notably the opposite of profound, right? And of course, when you use the P's to link the words profound and peak, and then connect them both to the simile that he then immediately goes into. Profound blue, and the peaks were like plumes of white flame above them. Were like plumes of white flame. So once again, we have a simile, right? So in the simile, he is telling us, he's telling us what the thing is like. He's not just doing an implicit comparison. He's inviting us to imagine plumes of white flame. But do you notice something about that simile? It's not just a simile. Because there's a metaphor in his simile. A plume of flame, well, that's a metaphor, comparing the flame to a plume. A plume is literally a feather, right? Like a big floofy feather. So he uses the metaphor of a plume to describe the white flame. And it's that metaphor, the metaphor of the plumes of white flame, that's the simile for the peaks. The peaks were like plumes of white flame. Right, now, plume does not refer to non-floofy feathers. It's a technical distinction, JJ. Absolutely, yeah. You can have a plume of smoke. That is also a metaphor, comparing it to a feather, comparing it to a plume, right? Like because it looks like a plume. It's shaped like a feather, right, as it floats off into the sky. Plumes, same thing. It is a common metaphor. It is not, or let me at least say it is not an uncommon metaphor. The metaphor of a plume is used, but it's because a plume is a very distinctive shape, right? Sort of curvy and puffy, right? Um, uh, yeah, yeah. Um, so, yeah, yeah. Like plumes of white flame above them. Also an upwelling of magma. Yes, yes. Um, yes. And it is interesting. Like, if we try to take both the metaphor and the simile all into, like, all on board at the same time, he's describing the snowy peaks of the mountains. Like, that's what we're talking about. But he compares the snow to flame, which, by the way, is kind of like calling the peaks profound, right? That is, he says the peaks are deep and the snow's on fire. You see what I'm getting at there? Right? We've got deepness and height being combined together earlier on. And we have what is actually snow being compared to flame here. It's a strange way to say there was snow on the mountains, right? When you see the mountains in the MIrrormere, there's snowy peaks. Look like plumes of flame, like flame coming up out of the mountain, emerging out of the mountain. There's more movement. Like, snow-capped mountains are a marvelous sight. One of my favorite sights, actually. I love the mountains. I can never get enough of looking at snow-capped peaks, but usually they don't move, right? Normally. There's this sense of activity there. Again, as if the snow on the mountaintop is emerging up out of it. Yeah, they don't look much like fire, Adam. They really don't, usually. Now, maybe they would a little bit more if they're reflected in water, but still. Remember what we're seeing, although we are seeing the mountains of Moria, not just some other random mountains. We're seeing the mirroring of the mountains. Remember that we didn't just immediately see that. Remember, this is coming in like a vision that we're seeing. So we're being given a vision of the mountain. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the mountains that they see in the water look the same as the mountains they would see if they looked up over their shoulder. Perhaps this also is part of what Durin was seeing. Maybe this description of the snow caps of the peaks is conveying some kind of significance, impression that Durin saw. stooped and looked in MIrrormere, and saw a crown of stars appear. That's, in the song, what we're told is the important thing that Durin sees. But when they look in, the first thing that they see is the mountains. Ha! Dark Satanic Biscuit Factory just posted a picture of a snow-capped mountain with wind blowing hard over it and blowing off some of the snow so that it looks kind of like a plume of white flame. Maybe. Maybe. We're not told the wind is whipping around, but maybe. All I'm suggesting, generally, is that I don't necessarily think that the vision, again, what we're seeing is not just a reflection, it's a vision. A reflection you can see instantly when you look into dark water on a sunny day. But they're seeing a vision, not a reflection. And so it does stand to reason that the vision that they would see in the mirror, the vision of the mountains that they would see, doesn't necessarily have to be, if there are differences between the vision of the mountains that they're seeing and the mountains that they would see if they just looked over their shoulder, that shouldn't be shocking, perhaps. Especially since, again, if we look at what is the picture, what is the message Durin received when he stood in this spot and looked in this mirror? That not just that he should be king in general. You would look good with a crown, Durin. You know, you should consider a headwear upgrade, right? It wasn't a fashion statement. It was about you should make your kingdom here, under these mountains. This is your kingdom. You are the king, and this is your kingdom. And again, even that first stanza of the poem, notice how we begin with the itinerant Durin wandering about, right? Tasting untasted wells, naming unnamed hills, right? And then he sees the crown of stars appear, and he establishes his kingdom. He settles down here. Prince says everything the light doesn't touch is Durin's kingdom. It's kind of like, you shall be the ruler of all you do not see. Yeah, something like that. Yes. Yeah. Garth Galerius, it is an interesting thing. We don't get many references. Whereas the elves think and talk about the stars all the time, it's only here that we get dwarves going on and on about stars. And it is conspicuous that they look down to look up, as you say. I like that. So Jackie is found in the sight that Frodo sees in the flood coming down the Bruinen at the end of book 1. We get plume, white, and flame there. And profound also, wasn't it? Anyway, or at least plume, white, and flame. That's it would be an interesting comparison. So yeah, whoever's going to do the moot paper on the Mirror of Galadriel and the MIrrormere might want to include Elrond's water magic into that as well. Elrond and Gandalf. That'd be interesting. Yeah. Anyway, okay. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars. That is a very dwarvish way of thinking, isn't it? Another simile. Glinting stars are shining. And they are compared to jewels sunk in the deep. Again, this is like the stars are the things that elves always compare things to. Right? The stars are like the beginning point. It's the other end of the simile. They might say that jewels glint like stars, but they're very unlikely to say the stars look like jewels, because they're at the bottom. They're sunk deep. They're sunk in the deep, right? So like in the center of what they can see, it's got the encircling mountains, and in the center of what they see is a space of sky. Well, not up there. It's down there, right? And deep in there, the furthest down thing they can see, as if it's jewels like embedded in the bottom of the lake, are stars, which are actually up there, but we're not looking up there. The final, notice this sentence. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. The structure of that sentence is really interesting. Notice how far he puts off the verb. Shone is the verb, right? There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars. So our main independent clause, if we were diagramming this sentence, is stars shone. Stars is the subject. Stars shone there. That's what this sentence says, right? But the simile postpones the verb. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. And there's something about the second half of it too, though the subordinate clause. Though sunlight was in the sky above. I was tempted to say that he's doing a sort of a reversal there too, but he's not. Sunlight was in the sky above. That's the subject and verb. Sunlight is the subject, was is the verb. It's right there. Starting at the beginning of the clause, like you would expect. Except it still feels like a reversal because of the shift. It's like the voice. So I'm thinking about the verbs here. The stars get an action verb and a participle. It's in the simile, I know, but sunk in the deep. There, adverb, sort of adverbial. Like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars. And we do get the reversal of the normal English pattern, of course, is subject and then verb. So the reversal, the putting the verb first. So I said he was postponing the verb, which he is, but he postpones the subject even more. Stars is the subject of this sentence. And he puts it at the dead end. Like it's not a dead end. He puts it absolutely at the end of that independent clause. It is good Germanic word order. But then, though sunlight was in the sky above, it's the shift to the linking verb. Sunlight was in the sky feels a very passive way to describe that. Like the real contrast, the clear contrast. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though the sun was shining in the sky above, would be the straightforward way to say that. Right? To contrast the shining of the stars in the lake with the shining of the sun up above. But instead he just says sunlight was in the sky. The stars are doing all the action, the sun is absent. Which I suppose makes sense on account of the sun is absent from the reflection too. Though sunlight, somehow or other happens to be in the sky above. Of their own stooping forms, no shadow could be seen. Whoa, uh-oh. Look at that. Oh, man. Oh, well. That's weird. My broadcast didn't blip, did it? Huh. Okay. Weird. All right. My connection to the Lotro server apparently did blip. So there we are. Lotro data center issue. Okay. Not my fault. That's fine. Okay. Of their own stooping forms, no shadow could be seen. And that one, that is, I'm still thinking syntax here in his sentence structure. Once again, he starts with a long phrase, of their own stooping forms, no shadow could be seen. So he uses the passive voice here. They, who are the ones seeing no shadow, they're absent. Because of course they are. That's the whole point. They're not there. So he does it in the passive voice. Of their own stooping forms, no shadow could be seen. And I do agree that shadow is a very conspicuous word here. Because that too is, we're obviously supposed to be remembering the poem. Sam remembers the poem. Sam remembers it, right? He already expressed his intention to learn it by heart after his first hearing. And the stooping is a direct link back to that. And as we all remember, he stooped and looked in MIrrormere and saw a crown of stars appear like gems upon a silver thread above the shadow of his head. Durin saw a shadow of his head in the MIrrormere, right here in this spot. And they can't see any shadow of themselves. No reflection, no shadow. So seeing a shadow maybe might happen. Depending on the lighting, you might not see your reflection very clearly. Especially, but that normally happens when you're backlit, right? So if there's like a really bright sky behind you and you lean over a lake, you might only see the shadow of your head because you're seeing the bright sky up above. Yeah, it depends on the angle of the sun and everything. But again, this None of this. If there's anything that is not relevant to what you see in the mirror, it's the angle of the sunlight, right? So, yeah. It is a little groundhog-like fencing frog. Yes, yes. Durin doesn't see a reflection of himself. He sees a shadow of his head. They don't even see shadows. No shadow could be seen. Girded Crayon says that he bets Tom Bombadil would see his reflection in the mirror. Probably. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. So they're not Durin. Also, although they do see the stars, do they see the crown of Durin? Maybe they do. Gimli seems to. O Keledzarum, fair and wonderful, there lies the crown of Durin till he wakes. Do they see it? Sam and Frodo? They see glinting stars. It's interesting to me, though, given how much this first stanza, listen to me, I'm thinking of poetry for sure. This first paragraph is reflecting the first stanza of the poem. It almost surprises me that there's no reference to the crown or the silver thread or anything like that. I would expect Sam to be looking for it. Or Frodo, either one of them. Like, if you look into the mirror next to Durin's stone, what do you expect to see? But there's no hint of whether or not they see it. Now, Adam, I agree. It could be that Gimli doesn't actually see the crown. He just knows that it's there. Like, that is, when he says, there lies the crown of Durin till he wakes, he could be doing one of two things. He could either be like gesturing down towards it and being like, there it is, right? Yonder lies, look, there lies. He could be pointing when he says, there lies the crown of Durin till he wakes. Or he could be, again, just giving you lore. Durin's crown is there. We can't see it, but it's there. It's there until he wakes. You could even potentially read that as being an explanation for why he can't see it. Like, there lies the crown of Durin till he wakes. So, like, when he wakes up, then he'll be able to see it again. But it's like gone out while he's asleep, potentially. I don't know. I do like that connection by Otram. The stars are sunk in the deep. And so is Sam when Pippin asks him his question. Sam is too deep in thought to answer. Right? Sam's mind is still down with the stars, trying to plumb the profound experience he has just had. As the White Knight in Looking Glass Land might say, it's all kinds of deepness. in these paragraphs. Oh no, the crown is definitely the stars. Like I don't want to. No. The crown's totally like a constellation in the stars. Totally. That's what Durin sees. Is he sees a crown of stars. But again, what is interesting to me is they see the jewels. And again, that's an image from, like, that simile is from the poem. Like gems upon a silver thread. That's what the stars are supposed to look like, and sure enough, they look like gems sunk in the deep. So everything from the poem is there, except the actual crown is not mentioned. Again, it's mentioned by Gimli, but it's not mentioned in the description. They also don't see the shadow of their heads. Yeah, Jackrabbit Monster, I don't know. Do we know which stars in the primary world are the equivalent of the stars of Durin's crown? Or are there? Is there a crown constellation? Because see, like, after this vision, I don't see any reason for us to expect there to be some kind of naturalistic explanation of Durin's vision. Right? That Durin just happened to look in the MIrrormere on a clear night at exactly the time when a constellation that looks kind of like a crown happened to be floating its reflection in the water above the shadow of his head. Like, that's, that is a possible naturalistic explanation. But that does not jive with what is being described here. That doesn't even fit with Gimli's desire to see the wonders of the veil. He wants to see he wants to see the wonders. Wonders implies there's something magical, something miraculous. Not just a really nice lake, which if you come at exactly the right time of the year and the season and the night and the weather conditions are correct, you can see a crown of stars above your head. Polka would never die. Still love your screen name. Till is a really interesting preposition. It could mean that the crown of Durin will cease lying there when he wakes up. But I don't think that that's the inescapable reading of it. The clear sense I get from that sentence is that his crown is waiting for him. Anyway, like, are there crown constellations? Yes. Are the stars in Middle-earth our stars? Well, the warrior constellation with his shining belt kind of makes it sound like it. Yes. However, again, what in this vision looks like it has a naturalistic explanation? That's not what we're seeing. That's not what Frodo and Sam are seeing. So I feel confident that's not what Durin was seeing. Yeah, the sickle of the Valar, the Valakirka is mentioned. being above Bree which is almost certainly what we would call the Big Dipper, which is also the plow. It's the same thing. Um, uh, yeah, yeah. So yeah, no, like there's lots of reasons to think that, but again, um, I don't care at all. That's not. I would say one of two things. Either A, that doesn't explain what Durin saw. That doesn't explain Durin's vision in this lake. Or if it does, the explanation goes the other way around. Yes, what Durin saw might explain what we have. That's exactly what I mean when I say it might be the other way around. There might be a crown constellation because Durin saw one. Now, that would presumably involve Varda, and I don't know how that would work out. No idea. I'm just saying I don't care about crown constellations in our sky. I don't think that that's at all relevant here. Or again, if it is only relevant because Varda, sorry, different, Arda's different. Varda and Aule, those are the two names I combined to make Arda. Varda and Aule shared the same vision. And so Varda put a crown constellation in the sky. But again, I don't think that it is certainly not just that he saw a reflection of that. And yes, there are 7 stars above the image of the crown on Moria Gate. Yes. Yes. Which clearly recalls this. I do believe that that is the reference there. Who do you think Gimli's saying farewell to? The lake? Durin? Kind of sounds like Durin. All of them? Right. Balin, Gandalf, Durin, Moria. Yeah. Yeah. And this is him turning away. And they're going to hasten off as soon as they get back. There's a lot of loony. there's a lot of farewells to be. It's definitely, I think I agree, a sort of a moment of closure. But Durin, what the vision makes Gimli think of? What does Gimli take away from his vision? Gimli says 2 things, besides farewell. 3 if you include farewell, but he says 2 things, right? The first is just an exclamation. He has heard about the wonder, and he had to turn aside to see it. He had to, remember? He cannot pass. He used Gandalf's words. He cannot pass without turning aside to see the wonder of the Vale. It's not an option. And it has lived up to his expectation. O Keled fair and wonderful. It is beautiful, and it is full of wonder. Notice, by the way, I think we get the answer to our question at the beginning of this sentence. What does O mean? when you say "oh," just a single capital O like that at the beginning of a sentence, maybe you don't, in fact, do that very often. In which case, maybe you should re-examine some of your life choices. But when you say "oh," yes, to Adele, that's exactly it. It's the vocative. You there who I'm talking to, listen up. "Oh" is a form of address. So "O Khaledzaram" means he's addressing Khaledzaram. "O Khaledzaram, fair and wonderful" is not a sentence. That's a fragment. He addresses it by name. "O Khaledzaram." And then he gives it two adjectives. Fair and wonderful. Then he gives a third person statement about it. Directed, that's not directed to Khaledzaram. He's not informing Khaledzaram that the crown of Durin lies there till he wakes. Right? He's turning in that second bit to talk, first full sentence, second bit, to talk to Frodo and Sam. Right? There lies the crown of Durin till he wakes. He's in tour guide mode again for that second sentence. And then, farewell. Which I think, for context, is directed to Khaledzaram. He just addressed Khaledzaram. He just called for Khaledzaram's attention. "Oh, Khaledzaram, farewell." Yeah. And yes, somebody was, Maureen was saying it sounds like a prayer. Yeah, exactly. Because that's what you're doing when you're praying, is trying to get someone's attention, right? You're addressing somebody. So when many old prayers, because again, this is an archaic mode of address, right? Starts off, "Oh Lord," right? You're addressing God. That's why you say "oh" at the beginning of it, right? Yep, exactly so. So yeah, it's now very formal. It wasn't necessarily. It's archaic, and so therefore it sounds like formal. Yeah, some people will spell it O-H, like "oh my lord," like O-H, my lord. But when they do, I think they're spelling it wrong. It's not O-H. It's not like, "Oh, my lord." "Oh, yeah, another thing." No, it's O, capital O, just like this. "Oh, my lord," is how, again, prayers will often begin. Exactly. So he's addressing Khaledzaram. He is personifying it in the first fragment there, personifying it and praising it. Yes, as Jackrabbit Monster says, "Oh heaven," with a capital O, and "oh heavens" are two different ideas. Yes, agreed. So, yes, OMG, "oh my God," in that sense, has an H because you're not talking to God. You're just using his name in that expression. Usually when you say OMG, you're not actually directing your remark to the Almighty, normally. But anyway, sorry. Okay, yeah. So it's a fine, but it's an important distinction. And again, it's a grammatical distinction. The capital O by itself is an indicator, just as Turandel was saying. It's the vocative. It's an indicator of like the mode that you're speaking, that you are directly like, I am now engaging in a form of direct address. What I'm saying is directed to you. And that's how what he's doing with the lake. And I think he's saying farewell to the lake. Now, I do believe that he is saying farewell to Moria and to Gandalf and to Balin and to Ori and to, Durin, in a sense, like to everything. This is closure of Gimli's entire experience. But it's the lake that he addresses. And remember, it's the lake that he could not pass without looking into. He bowed and turned away. So again, he bows to the lake also. I think that's what he's doing. Bowing to the lake. Right? He doesn't say at your service. Right? But from beginning to end, he is taking his formal leave and being extremely polite to the lake. Because this is a place of wonder. And it's fascinating because if you think about it, this is the one part of the whole Moria experience for Gimli. Like what Khazad-dûm means to Gimli. The family cultural experience of coming to Moria. How excited he was when he got to the door. How amazed he was at the magnitude and majesty of the place when he was following Gandalf around in it. All those things. All of those things are dwarf things. Evidence of things the dwarves have done. Whether it be Narvi and his craft at the gates, or whether it be Balin's folk who made Balin's tomb. Everything that he's seen, whether it be the Book of Mizarbo itself and its account. Everything that he's seen has been the work of dwarves, which either, his friends and kinsmen, whom he respects and loves, or his ancestors of Moria, whom he reveres. Golly, never mind. I'm not going to get tangled up in my syntax and my verb agreement. Let me continue with saying what I'm saying. All of those things, everything he has seen in Moria, everything that made Gimli's heart go pit-a-pat in one way or another, has been the work of the dwarves. But this is not. The culminating experience of his visit to Moria, the work of wonder that he could not pass by without seeing, is the one marvel, the one wonder that does not depend upon the work of dwarves. In fact, it's like the other way around. It inspired the work of dwarves. The whole reason the reason that the mountains of Moria have haunted his dreams is because Durin saw the crown of stars above the shadow of his head right here in this spot, in this mirror. Which means that whatever magic whatever blessing, whatever power is in this lake to show visions predated him, predated Durin, guided Durin. And nobody knows why. We're never told why, anyway. Maybe Durin figured it out. Gimli doesn't seem to know. I think this is why he treats Khaladzaram like a mystery. And I mean mystery in... I probably shouldn't have said it that way. It's not an easy verb, or not an easy word. I don't mean mystery in the sense of a puzzle you have to solve. I mean mystery, you know, like a paradox. Yeah, Balinor, sorry. I used it in the Christian sense, in the New Testament sense of mystery. But I know that's not helpful to everybody. But yeah, it's a wonder. It is a marvel that he cannot understand or explain. That perhaps the dwarves themselves don't understand or explain. Why does the MIrrormere do what it does? Why did it tell Durin? Like, who was sending that message? How? Again, it is not something made by... There is a pillar of stone with runes on it standing right here, which was made by dwarves and which Gimli explained to them. But that's not the marvel. Yeah. So, and I think that this is why Gimli treats this so differently. Why he personifies it. Why he bows to it. He is treating the MIrrormere like something outside himself. Again, he viewed the work of his ancestors with reverence and certainly with interest. But here, O Khaladzaram, fair and wonderful. Farewell. Yeah, it's a wonder not made by hands, Vardendil. Absolutely. But meaningful. It is this special, I will use that squishy and dangerous word, supernatural message. And it was a message not only sent to Durin, but still receivable by anybody who comes and looks in. And they just received it. Or something like it. Not the same because they can't see the shadows of their heads. Yeah. Well, Disney spiritual is a tricky word too. I mean, yeah, it points in the direction. But that's a tricky word too. Anyway, here's another fun thing to look forward to, though I fear we're going to have to look forward a little bit more. Nancy was just referring to the glittering caves. It will be very much fun to look at Gimli's gushing about the glittering caves and compare it with this. Compare how he talks about the glittering caves with how he talked about Moria and how he talks about the MIrrormere specifically. Yeah. Anyway, I agree with it. I know it's late, but final observation. The jump. This is an unusual kind of narrative jump. Gimli turned away and hastened back up the greensward to the road again. And then all of a sudden Pippin is there. Like, What did you see? Said Pippin to Sam. Presumably later. As we know, Frodo and Sam can't cover ground like Gimli is right now. And there is no indication of Frodo and Sam hastening along with him. They don't even get mentioned. And then all of a sudden, we're in a Pippin quote. What did you see? Said Pippin to Sam. Notice, we don't normally get conversation tags like that. He doesn't usually have to say, said person A to person B, because normally you can get one or even both of those things from the context of the passage in the conversation. But because that quotation, what did you see, is totally context free because of the time jump that's happened here, he has to give us both, said Pippin to Sam. But Sam was too deep in thought to answer. There's a sense in which we don't know what Sam saw. I'm thinking probably what's described is what Frodo saw. But did Sam see the same thing? Probably. What is he thinking about it? We don't know. Adam, I agree that it's interesting that he asked Sam and not Frodo. Why do you think he didn't ask Frodo? Pippin. Remember Pippin? Way back in Three's Company? Trying to make Sam go, like, you know, have you got the water hot? Remember that? He's just teasing Sam. I don't think he's really, like, you know, exploiting him in that moment. He was trying to get the reaction that Sam gave him, right? Sam, who was still asleep, right? No, I haven't, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Right? He was just trying to fluster him, right? That, you know, Sam sort of fell for it, right? It's class-based teasing. Agreed. It's teasing, but class-based teasing. I'm not trying to disguise class, but that, in fact, that's what I'm drawing attention to, right? The fact that Pippin is teasing him that way shows that he and Sam are companionable enough. But the class element of there shows that Pippin is aware of the distance between the two of them. So it is not true that Pippin would say this to Sam because he feels more comfortable with Sam than he does with Frodo. No. Cousin Frodo is the one that he's closer friends with, the one that he feels closer to. If anything, there's a bigger gap between Pippin and Sam than there is between Pippin and Frodo. Now, Frodo is officially the ring bearer, and maybe this, even in Pippin's mind, puts him in a different place, but I don't know. Oh, 80 Proto, I agree. I'm not trying to make a big deal of class divisions among them. I agree. All I'm saying is any piece of evidence we have, like anything we've been given about Sam and Pippin's relationship points to the fact that it is less close than Frodo's relationship with Pippin. And therefore, again, it's surprising that Pippin is asking Sam, not Frodo. It seems... It may be, JJ, as you say, to draw attention to Sam's thoughtfulness. Maybe Sam is looking particularly thoughtful, so Pippin is therefore asking him because Sam's thoughtfulness is making Pippin curious. It's possible that Frodo is even more deep in thought. And so Pippin tries Sam because it's even possible he's already tried to ask Frodo and gotten no answer. Frodo's half doubled over in pain, and Pippin doesn't want to bother him. Yeah, Frodo's still hiding it right now. He's still managing to keep it chill. Um, yeah, he probably is more out of breath than Sam. It's true. So yeah, maybe Frodo's standing there with his hands on his knees, sucking wind, and therefore Pippin's like, well, Sam looks like he could talk. I'll ask him. Um, Bricktails, it is also possibly a reflection of the fact that Pippin, Sam, and Merry are like Frodo is more in the leadership circle. Maybe Frodo is with Aragorn. It's possible. It's possible. Yeah. I don't think there is a definitive answer to this question, but I do agree that it's interesting. Not just that we jump ahead to a conversation, but that we jump ahead to a conversation between Pippin and Sam. And I think there can be lots of ways that we can take this. I think that it could fit into lots of different patterns, but it's a really interesting little point. And certainly the primary effect of it is to draw our attention to the profundity of Sam's thoughtfulness, thus sort of rounding out the deepness element. Darambar, it would seem almost necessary that this would be a Sam POV narrative moment. I mean, no, not necessary. Frodo could be looking on and seeing Pippin doing this. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if Sam's involvement in this makes it more or less likely that he would be the one to add this. It's possible. Either way is possible. It's also possible to me that Frodo wanted to try to convey the impact of the experience by describing Sam being too deep in thought about it to answer. Yeah, Fencing Frog, that's what I was thinking too. On the one hand, it sounds like a Sam point of view thing in the sense that this is just about what was going on with Sam, possibly off away from other people. But I agree that it would seem strange that Sam would call attention to his own thoughtfulness. Even that Sam would jump in with something just to be like, and here's what I was doing, being thoughtful. Like it seems like putting himself forward, which we know Sam is uncomfortable doing, as he will tell us later on. Anyway, so yeah. Okay. Super late. Sorry. I've gone super late again. Well, I started a little later than usual. Whatever. Thank you, everybody. I did want to tell you I'm going to be away next week, so no class next week. I'm taking my wife away for a few days. It's almost her birthday, so we're going away on a little trip. I will be away. So this is not moot travel. This is family travel this coming week. But I should be back the week after. So Cinco de Mayo, we will return. And we will look at cool streams and roads and interesting leadership choices by Aragorn on Cinco de Mayo. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see if I can get back in to Lotro here. See if Lotro... And yes, I saw how all of you people were drawing perfectly apt attention to the fact that I jinxed my Lotro setup by saying it was working unusually well. The reason it was working unusually well, or the sense in which it was working unusually well, was that it was like almost full screen. Like it normally, when I have run Lotro in like forever from now, and I'm running it in a window, it shrinks the window to that really small size, which is not very useful at all for streaming. And then I have to resize it. And that's what makes it crash, and the little ritual that I go through at the end of class every time. But it didn't do that. It like showed up almost full screen, and I was like, hey, I could just use this. I don't have to log out and log back in again. And then it crashed. So, and we'll see. I think it's looking like I'm getting back in successfully. So we will see. But good night to our book-only people. And we will do a brief field trip. We are looking around. We have gotten to the Lodes under Silvertine.
Oop, there you are.
There I am. I ended up having to come back in after. I was so excited. I was like, I'm not gonna have to go out and come back in. And then I did. Did anybody else get logged out? Was that just me?
Not today.
A whole bunch of people in both Lojo and DDO got kicked off the servers.
Okay, so it wasn't a universal thing, but it wasn't just me. Okay. All right. Fine.
Alrighty.
Here we go. So, back to the Deep Descent, which is where we got our milestone last time.
Yes. There we go.
Okay. All right. We're in this like basement, the only part of Moria that feels like a basement. Okay. So let's go up the stairs out of the hole in the ground that feels like a hole in the ground leading to a basement. All right, so let's start from the very north. So we got up these stairs before, which lead to that bridge, which lead up to the Dolphin View. And the Dolphin View, we had decided, like 2 years ago, was probably some kind of marketplace or something. So from here, we can just see it. So we can see through that tunnel up at the top of the incline on the other side of this bridge. That's the Dolphin View right there. So what we can see, that pillar that we can see, we can just make out through the tunnel, is part of the marketplace up there. So this is a road leading down from the market. I'm just trying to like contextualize where we, what we're seeing and what's going on. We do get this really very spectacular bridge, which is deceptively like with part railing and part not railing.
Yeah.
But
Just
anyway, yeah, just a tease. Yeah, to kind of make fun of the OSHA inspectors. But we have these multiple waterfalls. So this area is called the Stone Council. Right? So we have, or at least so my map text tells me, though it's not like there's any signage in here. We come through from the marketplace and we see all of these enormous dwarf faces with waterfall beards, though not all of them have waterfall beards, but many of them.
Did someone just fall over?
Possibly.
Yeah, it's Brunier.
Oops.
Yep.
Yeah, no railings. So, oh yeah, and the railings aren't always solid. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. Okay, so apart from the booby traps that they have created here,
Yep.
I'm trying to understand, like, it may just be that this was a cavern, which, by the way, has no obvious bottom to it.
That we can see, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of nudging towards the edge, and yeah, we can't see any bottom down there. So it goes down a long ways.
What a bridge.
Yeah, it goes down a long ways. And they, so it's possible that there were just like a bunch of like water pouring into this cavern, and they were like, you know what, this needs lots of, beard faces around them. But I mean, this is a transitional space, right?
Yeah.
Transition from the, built up, not built up, that's not quite the right, but it's like fully cracked, it's not rough hewn. It's, with buildings and stairs and everything. It's the plaza up there of the Dolphin View. Very city center, very, very civilized. And then you come into this enormous rough-hewn cavern with these huge dwarf faces just staring right at you as you cross the bridge.
Well, it would make sense if they were trying to divert water away from something and into something else.
It would. I'm just trying to think of the effect, like why this effect in this transitional space. If we're transitioning from a marketplace down to a mine, right? From like a living and business place to a working place. And yes, as JJ is pointing out, the doorway that we came through is also a face.
Yes.
It's way so far up that I did not notice that at all. Even looking up at the other faces, I didn't notice that. So there is very much a, like, these, and we've seen other, waterfall beard dwarf faces, but we've rarely seen them this close. I mean, they're right here.
It's pretty breathtaking. First time you see it.
Yeah, and like intimidating.
I mean, it's intimidating as watching a beardy man gargle or something. Because every time I look at him, I just think.
Yeah, it is the waterfall beard effect. I agree. Is, to me, it's like, if I'm in the right frame of mind, it's really impressive looking. If I'm in the wrong frame of mind, it feels weird, like they're drooling or vomiting or something like that. So yeah, I find it a risky artistic maneuver, frankly. But
I mean, there's very little damage. This is one of the few areas where it's still very much intact.
Only the railing, and who needs it anyway?
Yeah, railings are for chumps.
Right, but I agree. There's the bridge is like, there aren't broken bits off the bridge. It's not cracked or crumbling. I don't know if that one face down there looks like it might have fallen off and used to have been higher up or something. Or maybe it was just not completed or something. I don't know. That one looks a little bit odd.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the Dolphin View itself had a lot of like beautiful scenic overlooks.
And there were some of these up on the north side, up like the way up towards like the little bridge that went across to where the crossroads are.
Yeah, I mean, so the Dolphin View is definitely a look at all the beautiful art we can make kind of area. So this is a beautiful transition out of Dolphin View into the Silvertine Lodes.
Okay. Well, let's see a little bit more what we transition into. So we come through here and we go across the bridge and into the beard of one of the dwarves, and then notice how like this same pattern, like that knotwork pattern descending down vertically, which forms the beards on the outside, continues all the way on the inside, as if now we're just like going through, like we're parting the beard and going through it. It's kind of the effect though, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
Because now the walls are different in here. Now we're through and into somewhere else. And we have a big vaulted ceiling. Those big, like, knot, like Celtic knot sort of things in the middle of the arch right there. That's just enormous, that diamond up there.
Yep.
We come down the stairs, and there's a blank wall on the left. There's rough hewn. It becomes just rough hewn in front of us here. So through this final archway, looks like just rough stone.
Yeah, fun time over, work time now.
Yeah. I mean, that's a stark transition.
Yeah.
On this end of it.
We're in the different neighborhood.
Yeah. But then this side area where we came up with the basement, where you can fall down into the basement if you're not careful. Huge columns. Buttressed columns, in fact.
Yeah. It definitely looks like a load-bearing area that got turned into a basement.
Yeah, well, see, this part up here isn't the basement-y feeling part.
Yeah.
And the walls are just like the walls out there. Like this room, it's not obvious what this room is for at all.
Yeah. It seems like it's structurally holding up the floor above them.
Right, but like so would solid rock if they'd left it that way. Like, why did they carve this room at all? I mean, they put in these columns or left these columns because they needed to support the ceiling for sure. But because I agree, those big huge columns in the center certainly do look load bearing. But again, like my question is, why did they do it?
I don't know. It definitely feels like, oh, we got some extra space between the walls. Let's put a closet in between it.
Well, maybe, but like again, they had to carve this out, presumably.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did just past a desk. There are definitely desks here, and there's that guy over there. These are the desks we were looking at before with the mysterious bird and bow and two arrows pictures above them. But I can't believe that the desk. Oh, and then of course there's a tasks board. I can't believe that the desks themselves are the reason they carved out this room. Let's make a huge room with buttressed pillars and everything, so that like this dude can have a writing desk.
Oh, I have an idea. What if this was a workroom, one of the first chambers built in this area, and it was used for it was used for the workmen to house in while they carved out the rest of it to the north. But after it was done, it was still a perfectly good room, so they just kept it.
I see. So, a workroom for the construction, like when the construction was going
on. Yeah, like their home base. So they didn't need it to be like the biggest room ever. It was just because this is the first room we come to.
Right, site office, Aranos says. Yeah. Sure, something like that. And that could explain why it has a sub-basement too. That just feels like a place to store crates because they probably used it to store crates in, and they still in fact do store crates in it. As I say, I think I have a hard time thinking of a single place in all of Moria that feels more closed in and less fancy than this room down here. I mean, the ceiling's fancy, like it's got like the walls are done. It's not like it's rough hewn, but just as far as like the comparatively low ceiling, the single like it's just a hole in the ground with one entrance. You just almost never see that.
No.
So yeah, Aranas, I agree. They might have stored their ale here. That's very possible. Yeah. Yeah. No, I can. So you got your storage down there. You had your site office up here. This could also potentially be some kind of place where you would need to check in or out if you were coming
Yeah.
down here.
Yeah, that was the other one, like a toll or a customs, or you need to prove that you belong here because this is a work site.
You know, customs, if it were customs, like that basement would work real well for a vault.
Oh, yeah.
It does feel a little bit vaulty. It doesn't have a vaulty sort of door, but it would.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Confiscated Darwinian red.
if so, yeah, I get the thing that's a little peculiar about that. So if they were mining things in the mines, and they were bringing things up here on their way to the market up in the Dolphin View, right? So they would bring the whatever they find, whatever they're getting in the Silvertine loads, which is not obvious, and they would refine it and whatever, and then they would bring it up here. They wouldn't sell it up here, but they might have to pay taxes on it before they take it to market.
Yes, that could be it.
Yeah. That would
Or
make
maybe
sense.
certain, if this is the mines over here, there might be some contraband that, like, don't bring, you know, don't bring the really strong alcohol down here. This is a work site, or
Right. Possibly.
no open flames or whatever.
Yeah.
No pressure canisters, no fruit.
Right, exactly. No hazmats. Yeah.
Could it be an assay office where they assess whatever's coming up out of the mines and assign a price for it?
Right, something so that they
evaluate
get put some kind of stamp on it, so when you take it to the market, yeah, possibly.
Take a random test of ores to make sure that they're as pure as stated on the ingots.
Right. Yeah. I like the vault idea. If it is a vault, that does suggest that some kind of taxation is being collected here, so that they wanted a place to hide/keep the money. I say hide because you could easily hide that stairway.
Yeah, we did theorize last time there might be something that slides out over the staircases.
Yeah. That it could be actually a trap door that could close. And that's why it just feels not like a regular staircase, but just like a hole in the floor. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I like that. And if you have to pay your taxes first, right? If you have to stay here to pay taxes on what you're bringing out of the mines, then if you didn't, like if you were smuggling something and you tried to hide some of the stuff that you're bringing up from the mines, you see what would happen, right? You'd be coming up here, you'd be like, nope, nothing to declare. I'm good. I don't have a guilty conscience at all. I'm just heading up to the marketplace, minding my own business, until all of a sudden Durin himself is staring at me. And you've got to walk right under the grim and inspecting gaze of the dwarf fathers.
Definitely more forbidding going the other direction.
Yeah. It is. You do get a bigger impact coming the other way. But still, could work.
Yeah. I'd be especially nervous on a bridge with no railings when with that sort
Yes.
of symbolic.
Yes. Whereas, yes, in this direction, as you're kind of like entering, like going through the beard there and down into, that's like, going down into like the mines which are behind the beard here, right? The curtain of beard, is that's the inner heart. I mean, it was called the mines of Moria, right? Like it's funny. I always, like in the movie when Gimli is like, they call it a mine, right? I'm always like, yeah, they call it a mine. Like I remember being in the theater and being like, what is he talking about? Like, yes, they called it a mine, and they did so on account of it was a mine, right? Like it's it's not just a mine, sure, but
Maybe that's one of those things lost in translation. It's like,
right,
no, this is a mine. This is a mine city, which is different from a mine compound, which is different than a mine fortress.
right, maybe, but yes, that mining is going to be going on in all of them. Seems perfectly clear. Okay, all right. I like it. I think we've taken our first steps. Next time we will return to the deep descent, and then we will, in fact, descend and see how we transition down into the mines from there. All right.
All right.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you guys in a fortnight.
Uh huh.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.